Hello and welcome to the Full On Football podcast. I'm joined by friend of the show, DewsFutbol, James Dewsbury. Dews, how you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, mate, I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all, mate. Thanks for coming on. It's good to see you
Yeah,
again.
I'm looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Well, tonight we wanted to discuss the format of the World Cup, going through group by group, and you just telling me a bit about each team, and then kind of deciding between us who we think is going to go through. So, if we want to start with Group A, obviously the first game of the World Cup kicks off tonight. So, by the time this one goes live, it'll be a few hours before that first game's played. Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, and Netherlands. Do you want to just walk me through the group and how you think it's going to pan out and a bit about each team?
Yep. So you got Qatar, the hosts. Obviously, a lot of people won't know a great deal about them as all of their players play in Qatar. However, they're a side with recent success. They won the Asian Cup in 2019, beating Japan 3-1 in the final, and a strong Japan side as well. They're also really experienced. 17 out of the 26 players have over 30 caps, with 5 having over 100. These guys know the team. They know how to play. I don't know how well they'll do in this group, but I think a lot of people will underrate them. Under their coach, their Spaniard, Felix Sanchez, Qatar do like to play a 3-5-2, a 5-3-2, and their main threats are a skillful forward called Akram Afif, who had spells in Spain and Belgium, and a striking partner, Almoez Ali. He's the country's top scorer with 42 goals. He's seemingly someone who scores more for country than he does for club, including his 9 goals in that Asian Cup triumph. And his goal in the final was unbelievable. A bicycle kick, fantastic. And the form actually going into the World Cup isn't too bad, only losing one out of their last 8, which was to a very strong Canada side, drawing 4 and scoring 10. So they're not actually too. They are. I don't know how well they're doing this group, but I think they will surprise a few people.
So obviously Qatar, you've just touched on it. 42 international goals, by the way. That's not a bad nudge. I don't care what level of opposition you're playing against. That's not bad at all. So I can see what you're saying about them being perhaps a bit underrated. And they're not actually, I've read they're the third lowest ranked side in the tournament, which surprised me.
I think that's right. Yeah.
I thought they'd be the lowest. So there again, that's proof of the fact that yeah, they're not as weak as perhaps people would think. What about Ecuador, Senegal, and Netherlands? Because I look at this group and perhaps I'm being naive, and I feel like Qatar are going to be the weakest team of those four.
Yeah, so Ecuador, they're kind of like a hipster side. They've got like loads of players from Brighton for some reason. But these guys do not score a lot. Their talents in their midfield, but they will keep clean sheets. I mean, their last 11 games, they've won 2, lost 1, and drawn 8. 4 of them have been 0-0s and 4 of them have been 1-1s. However, they did keep the 2 World Cup favourites in Brazil and Argentina to a 1-1 draw. So they've proven that they can do it against these high-tier oppositions. But as I say, goals are a massive issue. Their main goal threat is the former West Ham player, Enner Valencia. His 35 goals is only 4 or less than the rest of the team combined, which kind of tells you a lot.
Mind you, you say that England aren't too far off with Harry Kane and Sterling. I think outside of those
you're
two.
not wrong. You're not wrong, to be fair. And these results have kind of been coming like in a 4-3-3, but they've also tried to play like a 4-4-2. And I think they've done this because in like the earlier stages, they were involved in like crazy games like 3-2s, 4-2s, even 6-1s. And I think they've just like stabilized themselves. And these, I think, out of like, I know Senegal and Netherlands are kind of like the 2 favorites, but out of like Ecuador and Ecuador and Qatar, these are the ones that are likely going to finish in the top 2.
So obviously Senegal, you just touched on there, Sadio Mane, who many would claim to be their best player, probably is their best player. Let's be fair, is actually going to miss the tournament. Massive shame for Senegal. They are the AFCON winners. Obviously, they knocked. It was a bit of a deja vu, wasn't it? They knocked Egypt out on penalties after beating them on penalties in the AFCON in space
Yeah.
of about a month. How does their side look going into the tournament? How big of a loss is Sadio Mane?
I mean, Mane's a huge loss. They will probably replace him with either Bamba Dieng from Marseille or Ismaila Sarr from Watford. So they can get a sort of like for like change. However, winning does breed winning, and this Senegal side is in fantastic form. Ever since losing the AFCON final in 2019, they've only lost 2 of the last 29 games, winning 20 of them. Now, usually they play like a 4-3-3, and as I say, they've got a like-for-like replacement for Sadio Mane. It's a team with a hell of a lot of experience in the midfield and at the centre back area with the likes of Diallo and Koulibaly. However, that midfield is kind of a bunch of sixes. So how they're going to break down teams, I think this is where they'll struggle to actually score against these good oppositions. And against like an Ecuador, even a Qatar, who are just going to kind of sit back, this is where they'll struggle. And I think against Netherlands, they could get beaten quite heavily, or they could surprise us with a 1-0 win. I don't think they're quite as good as a lot of people might make them out to be, but they're still very capable.
So with Netherlands, that's a side that, outside looking in, they're in fantastic form. Everybody knows they're in a good form leading up to the World Cup. However, looking at the squad on paper, and perhaps it's just a fact, a bit of snobbery on my part, maybe I don't know enough about them, but I look at the Netherlands side that they've had for my lifetime, Van der Vaart, Van Persie, Robben, Van Nistelrooy, etc. I don't think this side is at the level of previous sides. However, their form and the potential run does lead to suggest that they might actually be looking at a semi-final onwards here with this side. That's just what I'm looking at. How do you see it with Netherlands? What's your assessment?
Yeah, I see it exactly the same as you. I was before doing like my research on it, I thought these guys make the quarterfinal, fair play. But they're in very good form. Ever since Van Gaal took charge after they got knocked out of the Euros, they've been undefeated, winning most of the games and topping their Nations League group, winning 5 out of 6. They usually do play a 3-5-2 with Memphis Depay is kind of that constant up front. And then you will get players such as Wout Weghorst, Vincent Janssen, remember him from Tottenham, as like your kind of like big man, little man. But then they can also change it and have the more trickier players like Noah Lang, Cody Gakpo, or Steven Bergwijn. So defensively, again, very solid. But they should make it out of this group. And their form generally does say that they can go very far at this World Cup.
Depay's form for Netherlands is unbelievable, isn't it? He's constantly in the goals, and even Wijnaldum, pre-injury, he was constantly scoring a lot of goals for Netherlands. So that will be a massive loss. How do you see this group playing out? Who's going to be going? The two teams going through, and if I could push you, what order are you going for?
Right, I'm going to go a little bit rogue here. I'm going to go Netherlands top. That's not rogue. I can. Do I want to say Qatar? Nah, surely not. Nah, we can't. I don't think that'll happen.
Well, you've not been reading Samuel Eto'o and all of that, have you? Qatar knocking out England in the round of 16.
I mean, if that happens, then fair play. That'd be a story. I think Ecuador could finish second. I don't. There's something about Senegal. Without Sadio Mane, I do worry about them. I've got Qatar third, Senegal fourth.
It's an interesting way round, but albeit I can see the Ecuador Senegal thing. I can see Ecuador just pimping that. I don't think there's a lot in it. The South American teams aren't bad, and Senegal without Mane, it will be a big loss. So on to Group B. You're an England Supporters Club member. You're a passionate England man. Surely England are going to top this group. Talk to me about, I guess, starting with England, onto Iran, USA, and Wales. Let's go through their squads. What have they got?
Right, Iran are an interesting side. They could surprise a hell of a lot of people. Another side in fantastic form, only losing one qualifier, which was against South Korea, but they did top that group. They're capable of scoring goals, banging in 15 goals, topping their group, as I say. However, they made a late managerial change, bringing in Carlos Queiroz as the presidential elections, like in the Iranian FA, did change, and that was a part of his campaign. He'd bring in Queiroz, and he won. He brought in Queiroz. The 4 games he's coached have been very tight affairs, although they did beat Uruguay 1-0. They can play footy as well. Like some of the goals I was watching, it was lovely one-touch football, and they'd pass it into the net. It was really surprising. They will more than likely play like a 4-1-4-1, and their star player really is Mehdi Taremi of Porto, who can play striker, or he can play a little bit out wide, facilitating for someone like Sardar Azmoun to play up top. But these could frustrate, really, really could frustrate. And if these finish above USA and Wales, it would not surprise me in the slightest.
So clearly, then they're a lot better than people are perhaps making out, because I hear most people predicting USA or Wales for that second spot. It seems to be between those two. So moving on to the USA, how is the state of football in America at the moment? Do they have a strong side?
They have a strong potential side. This is a World Cup too early for them. I think they go in as the youngest squad actually in the competition.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, well, at least that was the prediction. I don't know whether that ended up coming true. But their play style doesn't quite match their quality yet. They're usually a very ball dominant side, but they're not very good at breaking down low blocks. If they get the goal early, then they can blow teams away. However, with their attacking fullbacks, Serginho Dest and Anthony Robinson, they can get caught on the counter attack, especially considering their centre backs do not cover very well. They've lost their best centre back, Miles Robinson, due to injury. And recently their form's been really uninspiring. Besides a 3-0 win over Morocco, they got played off the park by Japan in a 2-0 loss and bored everyone to death against Saudi Arabia. One of their main struggles is a striker. They've got talented players like Jesus Ferreira, who's very, very good until you get him in front of goal. And these wingers like Pulisic, Brendan Aronson, they don't score an incredible amount of goals. Like let's take Liverpool, for example. They're not like a Sadio Mane and Mo Salah. They're not going to get the goals from wide, even though they do kind of play like they should. But it's quite telling just how young this side is. I mean, only 2 of the players are in double digits for goals. One of them being Jordan Morris, who won't even play. In fact, he was a real surprising inclusion. I just think it might be a World Cup too early for them.
Is Pulisic fit?
He should be, yeah. He's in the squad.
Fine, because he's supposed to be the poster boy or whatever. And you can see he has got bundles of ability when he does play, but it's just getting him fit. Misses so many games of football. And perhaps in the modern day, as much as you can have all the ability, he's got all of it. Obviously, there's the Eden Hazard comparisons. I can see it stylistically, but you've got to back it up with the numbers. And perhaps that's the part of the game where he needs to improve. So on to Wales. Obviously, Wales's hopes from the very basic standpoint will be very much pinned on Gareth Bale. Now, I know that Gareth Bale's playing in the MLS now, might not be the player he was, but I do maintain, I still think he's got the ability to switch it on when he wants to. Not that he could do it over a 38-game season, but okay, if he was playing in a Champions League semi-final and you just said, Gareth, just give me 60 minutes, just make a difference, I still think he's good enough to do it. So based on that, when he plays against England, when he plays against USA in a group game, and all you're asking for is just give me one game, just give me one game at full throttle, I still think he can cause serious problems, as well as the fact they've got some other good players in the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bale is that clutch player. I mean, you saw it in the qualifying against like Bulgaria. I think they go and win 3-2 away from home, and it's massive because they just about scrape through. And then in the what was it, the thing after the playoffs, the qualification playoffs, against Austria and Ukraine, he scored all their 3 goals. Although the third goal was an own goal, it was from his free kick. He is so clutch for them. But I'm struggling to predict. I'm really struggling to predict this side. They will let the other teams just have the ball, maybe other than Iran, but USA and England will be absolutely ball dominant over them. They're going to rely more on that counter-attacking pace of like Dan James and Brennan Johnson. I mean, especially in that Ukraine game, they got absolutely dominated. And I found out a pretty cool stat. Hennessy's 9 saves that game were the most in that qualifying without conceding, which kind of says they did ride their luck a little bit. And it's I would like to see them go through, but it wouldn't surprise me if they finish bottom of this group.
Wow, really? So that's a lot of people a lot of people obviously tipping them to be second in the group, and they have got some good players. We talk about, I know that they're aging. Ramsey, Bale, Joe Allen. You've just mentioned Dan James as well. Ben Davis will be there. These are players that have played Premier League football or better. Serie A, La Liga, etc. So they're not mugs, but the fact that shows how highly you must rate Iran.
Yeah, I just think Wales are kind of a side that do ride their luck a little bit, if I'm being honest.
And maybe they'll continue to ride their luck. So on to the home football, England. It's coming home. Is it coming home? Because, certainly just start with this group. We'll talk about, perhaps on another podcast episode, whether it actually is coming home. I don't want to jinx it, mate. I don't want to jinx it. But you'd like to think, just being rational, taking the emotion out of it, England should win this group.
Oh, yeah. England should absolutely win this group. Like 1 to 11. There's no Iran player that will get in the England side. There's no USA player that will get in the England side, and there's no Wales player that will get in the England side. However, they are probably with Wales the most out of form side going into this World Cup. having not won a single game in 6. They've been so uninspiring. Only scored in 2 of those games. Granted, they scored 3 against Germany, but that was because we went 2-0 down, and eventually Southgate goes, "Oh, you know what? Let's try and attack," and we go and blow Germany away until they score a late equaliser. Okay, they were tough opposition, but when we're trying to win a World Cup, you've got to beat these tough opponents. And England truly run the risk of once again being too sterile, and it really coming back to bite them. I mean, you look at Croatia, you look at Italy, we score early, and we let the other side just have the ball, and it really did hamper us.
So in terms of stuff like shape, obviously a lot's made around that. Do you think it'll be a back 5 or a back 4 going into the group games? Because I think it's quite evident based on the Nations League campaigns and previous tournaments, such as the Euros 18 months ago, against anybody that's a top ranked side, we're going to play a 5. That hasn't, we've not played a 5 against a top ranked side, but will we play a 5 in the group game?
Oh, sorry, mate, you froze there. What did you say?
So will we play a 5 in the group games? Because against any top ranked side, we know that we're going to play a 5. That's evident. We did 18 months ago. We did it in all of the Nations League games. But are we going to go with that against the sides in the group?
I mean, we probably will, because I can't see Southgate kind of just changing his philosophy. However, I would like to see us just, let the shackles off. Why not? You're going to face Iran and Wales here. These are 2 sides that are not going to try and outplay us. We've got the quality. We've got Bellingham, Rice, Calvin Phillips, Kane, Sterling, Saka, Maddison, Mount, Grealish. We have all these players that can just, if you let the shackles off, they can do whatever they want. And I just really, really worry that he won't let it happen. But in the groups against these sides, he absolutely should. But I don't think he will.
Absolutely. So who's going through in this group?
In this order: England first, Iran second, USA third, Wales fourth.
Which is alphabetical order, if I'm not mistaken. So it'll stay as it is right now. Group C, my tip to win the tournament: Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Poland. A really interesting group. I probably hazard a guess that Argentina will win this group. But in terms of the second place, I think you could argue it. Walk me through this group. Starting with Argentina. Are they going to go through? What side are they going to be playing? How do you see it?
I mean, yeah, it would be a miracle for the other 3 sides if Argentina didn't finish top of this group. They're 36 games unbeaten. I think they're only 1 behind Italy's world record of a couple of years ago. They'll likely play a 4-3-1-2. They're missing one of their best midfielders in Giovanni Lo Celso. But I mean, they're such a good team. They're like England in the fact that every player likes each other. They're all working as a team, but they're actually quite entertaining to watch. And when you've got Lionel Messi at the 10, any team can be entertaining to watch. Their midfield 3 will likely be Leandro Paredes from Juve, Rodrigo de Paul from Atletico, and Alexis McAllister from Argentina. And you'll likely have a 2 up top with Lautaro Martinez and Di Maria. But Di Maria will always push wide. That's his natural game. And let Messi kind of push forward when he wants to. But I can fully see why these are one of the favourites. They're very good.
And Messi playing in that 10 role probably gets the best out of his attributes. And he's been able to play there for years, as we know. The whole false 9 thing in 2012, when he got all of those goals, was almost dropping in as a 10. So yeah. Fantastic footballer, possibly the greatest ever, probably for a lot of people anyway. On to Saudi Arabia. What are they going to offer at this tournament? Because I think the obvious thing is the fact that they've got to travel the least. And I know that might sound like a really basic statement, but it definitely comes into it. Being used to a climate, having lots of fans getting across the border and supporting you, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. One thing I put in my notes here, Saudi Arabia could easily draw their way into the round of 16. Well, since their 3-2 win over China in October of 2021, Saudi Arabia have played 18 games and not one of them has had more than 2 goals in them. And they have faced very good sides such as USA, Morocco, Colombia, Ecuador, Croatia. All sides there that could get out of this group. They're just, like I say, they could finish in second on 3 points, or they can finish dead last on 0 points with a goal difference like -8. They could, if they hold their own, if they play the game, if they break the game down in like stages and just hold their own, they could do all right in this group. I just don't know if they will, because they've not got that really good talent up top. They're a more defensive side.
So their hopes lie on defensive hopes as opposed to scoring goals and trying to win games. Okay. So in terms of Mexico in this group, that's a side that I think a lot of people might not realize how good they are, perhaps. I think they've got some good players, Mexico. How do you see it? Do you think they're gonna have a good tournament, or are they going out early? Have I got it totally wrong?
Well, I don't really. They're such an uninspiring side. They finished joint top of their CONCACAF group, but that's only because Canada kind of tailed off when they already qualified. And nobody likes their coach, Tata Martino, sorry. Like I say, they've got good players in terms of names, but their form is just average. Like, you'll see the usual suspects, such as like Andres Guardado, Hector Herrera, even the great Guillermo Ochoa, the World Cup icon. Whether they start or not is another question. They're okay. They don't score a lot. They concede. They don't concede a lot. They're not phenomenal, but it's Mexico. They always find a way to make it out. They've got the player quality to get out of this group, but like I say, that's more based on player quality than actual tactics.
And I think it's more for me, the group that they're in. I just think there's a good chance that they'll sneak through here. I think the obvious one would be
100%,
Poland,
yeah.
which we're going to come on to next. But I think so much of their hopes obviously relies on Robert Lewandowski. So how important is Lewandowski to Poland's hopes? Because they have got other good players as well. It's not all about him, but he is the one world-class player.
Oh yeah, he is the one like incredible player, and like he's luckily against Saudi Arabia and Mexico, two sides he's more than capable of scoring against, and Poland are more than capable of creating against them. But they're just not a very good side. They're in pretty rubbish form, and if it wasn't for Wales being worse, they would have been relegated from the Nations League group. They're another side that will like play a back three, back five, but the quality in defense is just not at that level. It's like Kamil Glick and a couple of other players. It's not incredible. They will more than likely play through the middle instead of crossing a lot. In their midfield, they've got players like Zielinski, who's in phenomenal form for Napoli. And I was looking at their stats. I was looking at like crossing stats for Poland, and they just do not use those wide players at all. Like the crossing is so minimal. But again, I think if they go through, it's because two of the other sides are kind of worse, and not because Poland are incredible.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think, like you said, it's so much of it's going to be reliant on Lewandowski scoring those goals in the games against Saudi Arabia and Mexico. He could easily score a hat trick in one and one goal in the other, and that is enough to send them through. So Group D, France, obviously World Cup holders. Lost Benzema yesterday through injury, so he's not going to be at the tournament, which a lot of people are going to say, this is a controversial one for you. A lot of people are going to say that's a big loss, but I actually thought that might cause for more problems than solutions having him back in the frame, because it changes the dynamics of a winning side, really. You're not quite sure. Obviously, 2018, you had a balance and it worked. And then suddenly you've got a player that you have to pick him, but at the same time, you have to shuffle a few pieces on the chessboard to get him in. How do you see with France, Australia, Denmark, Tunisia?
Yeah.
How's that? Oh, sorry, we never actually ended. Just quickly on Group C, who's going
Oh,
through?
yeah.
Sorry.
Argentina top, Poland second. Oh, and it's a coin toss between Saudi Arabia and Mexico. Let's just go Mexico third, Saudi Arabia fourth. But I can even see Saudi Arabia going through. It really wouldn't surprise me.
Wow. Okay.
It's really tricky. They're three sides that are like pretty even in a sense. But Saudi Arabia are in much better form than the other two.
So Argentina and Poland, the two.
Yeah, we'll go Argentina, Poland.
Okay, excellent. So back onto Group D. Sorry, just switching back there. France. Start with France. France, Australia, Denmark, Tunisia. How are France going to fare this tournament?
Everyone's injured and in shocking form. But going off what you said about Benzema, he is a big loss in the sense that you do have like a world-class player who's had the season of his life. However, I don't think he's played the last 3 games for France. It's been Mbappe and Giroud, throwback to 2018. France started their Nations League with a back 4, And after 2 draws and a loss, their manager Deschamps did go to a back three, try and bring the wing backs into play a little bit more. But 2 losses and a win kind of tell you that that hasn't worked. Only scoring twice as well. The midfield is a weakness. No Pogba, no Kante. It's two of the staple players from their 2018 triumph. And now you'll see the likes of Aurelien Tchouameni, Yusuf Fofana. Was Camavinga in the squad? Yeah, Camavinga made the squad. They're good club players. Fofana's been very good for Monaco, but that step up to international level is quite big. However, they are a side that if they don't finish first, they're finished in second. They are just so much better than Australia and Tunisia.
Absolutely are. I just think with France is whether they could hit the self-destruct button. I think
Yeah.
they've probably got the best squad in the tournament. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I don't think they'll win the tournament, though. I really can't see it. I think it's hard to win it back to back, plus the self-destruct element of it. And you mentioned about the midfield, Pogba, Kante, Matuidi's retired as well. So the entire midfield is different to last time. I'm quickly on Olivier Giroud. 3 goals away from breaking Thierry Henry's record. So there is the opportunity for him to do it because he probably will start given Benzema's injury news. Australia. Talk to me about Australia's football team. What have they got to offer?
Well, their manager, Graham Arnold, a few months ago now, described them as trying to play like Liverpool, which is great. Like, that's entertaining for Australia fans, but that's not very good when you're up against like France and Denmark. You really do worry for them. I mean, they limped through qualification, only going through on penalties against a Peru side who were just equally as bad. And they are not coming to this World Cup with a great bit of form. Sorry, they're coming into this World Cup with a lot of form. They've won their last 5 games. They weren't incredibly convincing, and they are capable of scoring some goals. However, as I say, they faced some decent sides in the lead up to this World Cup, such as Japan and Saudi Arabia, and they've struggled. I think they've lost both games, and they haven't been great. The likely formation, Graham Arnold would like to go for a 4-5-1, packing that midfield like the likes of Aaron Moy and Stitch. He used to play for Bristol City, didn't he?
I don't recognise him, but Aaron Moy I recognise obviously from Brighton.
I might be thinking of someone else. The 4-5-1 they've been recently trying, and they're just going to try and pack out that midfield against the good sides. But I don't. They're not good enough. It's probably the worst Australia side that have been to a World Cup for a long time.
So any Aussies, if you're listening, stick to cricket. Denmark.
Well, they did beat us, to be fair.
Yeah, they did. They did. It's a shame, but we won the World Cup on their turf.
They did win the World Cup, so
that's the end of that argument.
Exactly.
Denmark obviously have a fantastic side. Got to the semi-finals of the last Euros. That Christian Eriksen back in the squad, which is a miracle given what happened 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Probably slightly underappreciated. I think there's a little bit of snobbery in this country. I think if we were to, I don't think it can happen, but if we drew Denmark in a knockout game, just say we got them in the round of 16, I don't think that is possible, to be fair, but just imagining we did, I think a lot of the English media would expect us to just roll over them, but I don't think that's the case. I think they're a lot better than people give them credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. They are a very solid side. They're not goal machines. I mean, the Nations League campaign, they had a very the Nations League campaign was very good actually. They only met their match when they faced Croatia, but then they beat France in their group. They finished second with France finishing third and beat France both times. They'll likely play a back three with the likes of Simon Kjær, Andreas Christensen, Joachim Andersen. But that reintroduction of Eriksen is massive because he adds so much creativity in that midfield and just control further forward. Because you'll see Eriksen kind of play there's like they play like a 3-4-2-1, and you'll see Eriksen in that too, with someone else. But as I say, they don't score many goals. They haven't got a Lewandowski. They've not got a Kane. They're kind of relying on players such as Kasper Dolberg, Martin Braithwaite, and even Yusuf Poulsen, and hoping the midfield can chip in. I don't think it's incredibly sustainable. And if they do go through, which I do think they will, if they come up against like a Brazil or Argentina, they will play well, but I can see them getting beaten by 2 or 3 goals.
So they're a side then that's built on a solid base as opposed to scoring too many goals. So players like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg obviously will be integral to what they're doing. They're a good holding midfielder, plays well for Tottenham. Tunisia, aside, obviously, in the past, but even England, we've had history with Tunisia, capable of an upset at the World Cup. They've proved that historically. How does their side look?
Well, I didn't know a lot about them going into this, but if we're going off recent form, we could be incredibly underrating them. In their qualifying group, they were so convincing, and they only conceded twice in the whole qualification. Their former manager, Monde Caballé, got them here, but was sacked after a poor African Cup of Nations. Tunisia have since changed their manager to Jalal Kadri, who was Cabé's assistant, and they haven't looked back. They've only lost one in their last 9, which, to be fair, was a 5-1 thrashing to Brazil. But in that run, they've also beaten sides like Chile, Japan, and even Iran by 2 goals or more. And they kept clean sheets in all of those games. Tunisia do often like to play a 4-3-3 with 3 combative midfielders, which is where the players like Shqiri of Köln is so important. He was fantastic last season, especially. But in their last warm-up game against Iran, they did try a back 3. If they're a good side, do I see them going through? Probably not.
So
They
that
do
brings
lack like a big goal scorer.
that brings me on to the obvious question with Group D: who are going to be the sides going through?
I'm gonna go Denmark first, France second, Tunisia third, Australia fourth.
It's an interesting order. France second, and that could completely change the draw, couldn't it, for England from England's perspective?
Yeah.
Absolutely could. Well, Dews, we're going to pause it there, then we're going to take it on to part 2, where we're going to look at Group E till the end of the groups. But stay tuned, and we're going to go through the rest of the groups.